Shirley here with Palace Moon, and this is a moon hour. We just had a moon in Capricorn, a full moon, and I actually want to talk about Uranus because why not? And so this is me recapping the Uranus Ingress Gemini so far this week. So countdown. I saw a short of a lady from South Korea, and she said that there is not the price of the cabbage that they use for kimchi has gone up, and she showed us how to do it with regular cabbage. So I was thinking, if the people cannot afford their traditional food, there's going to be a revolution. I checked South Korean's chart. North Korea has Uranus in Cancer, so we're not going to have a civil war in North Korea, probably not. But South Korea has Uranus on the 29th degree of Gemini, which means it is already included in the list of civil war countries. So this was people really not being able to afford to buy the cabbage that they use for kimchi is, I think, removing the legitimacy of the monopoly over power of the country. But yes, I know nothing about the politics of South Korea. By the way, in the North Korea, there was an attempt to have litigation of the government, including the leaders, for torture and rape. And we don't know if this would work out, but I can say this definitely is Uranus in Gemini, but it's not the Uranus of North Korea itself, because North Korea has Uranus in 0 degree Cancer. Number 2, so the dollar. I am situated in Israel, and everywhere people are wondering, should they buy a dollar, because the dollar is at an all-time low. This was my prediction, that currency is going to be unstable, and that we might even have the days where my grandparents tell that, you go, let's say a meal costs $5, you go with $5, and you say, Shirley, how come $5? And I'm like, I'm in Israel. If you buy actual like oatmeal, then that's your $5, and you go to the store with $5 and they tell you, I'm sorry, but now it is 10. And I say, but I called you before I came out and it's 2 meters. I say, I know, but this has changed, now it's 10. And this is the times where Uranus in Gemini can bring us such currency changes, because this is an air sign, and because this is a sign to do with trade. Uranus is fast, Gemini is fast, so there's nothing like Uranus in Gemini to have instability of currency. So to those that ask me, should they buy the dollars, I'm not your financial consultant. When it comes to the astrology, instability is predicted. In those times, either you think about, okay, what will be the resolution of this, then you want to put your bet on, this is what I would do, okay, yes, you have to, you're a sovereign being, but what I would put my dollar on, or my shekel on, or my energy on, or my bet on, is anything that best appeases Uranus in Gemini and Sedna in Gemini. I discussed that in length in my other channels. If you want me to make a video about this, please state it in the comments, because I talked so much about that I think is pretty obvious. It's time of labor revolution, which later brings suffragist movement, but also anything Uranus, okay, so gender, sex, labor, trade, sexual sovereignty, because Uranus is about Kundalini energy. This is the spark. And now to number 3. I ran into an article or short that talked about the Bezos Amadox. No, Amadox is different. What is that? The Bezos Amazon. Amdocs, I will need to check. It's another company. And they said there was fixing the myth that Bezos was a self-made person. Okay, not to take away from his hard work, but a lot of his hard work involved buying competitors or very likely threatening their lives, as happens with a lot of business. And the family was from a hedge fund, so he got $100,000 for the first year that he was spending in the garage, and then another $100,000, and that the mergers and acquisitions, okay, were so. And then even though the company is indeed profitable, the employees die in accidents more often than other people in the industry, and their labor rights, okay, they can't afford the things and so on, even though they're working for a stable corporation called Amazon. Okay, so that's not to take away from his hard work as an entrepreneur. It's still beyond challenging, even if you do buy your competitors and even if you're a mob boss, it's still very hard work. But it's also a reality check on the anybody can do that myth and the treatment to the employees. And the reason this short was coming about is because they tried to annihilate the attempt to unionize by the employees. I cannot give a worse business advice. Like if I wanted Bezos to go bankrupt, I would tell him, Bezos, fight with them like you fight the plague, kill all of them, do that, because he would end up on the guillotine. If I was a person that doesn't like Bezos, I would tell him, don't give up on them. They are like slaves. They are like this. They are like that. Kill all of them. And then, of course, he would be assassinated. By the way, at this time, another thing that I saw was businesses. I saw this in restaurants. And there are infiltrations of restaurants. And they attempt to, if they see a client, they skip him to come back. And maybe one time they buy coffee, one time they buy coffee, then they buy a salad with a glass of wine. Then they buy, a meal. And then they begin to become like a client that comes to the place and maybe working on something, maybe trying to get their business done. They begin to send infiltration so that these clients won't be able to be a consistent clients in those cafes, and so the client can't build themselves up, and the restaurant begins to lose just the clients that would sit at the cafe and would build the future. They do that to take over the real estate. However, since those cafes still did not adapt their work to people with disability, people that can't stand on their feet. You think about the barista. You really don't need a barista to stand on their feet all day. They can have a chair with like wheels or something, and they can lower the bench where they make the cafe. And this can absolutely work for people with disability. Even waiters, okay? You can absolutely have waiters that if they are on a wheelchair, then they can sit, okay, with the wheelchair. And all of these things are making it challenging for these cafes to basically withstand, because what is going to happen is, because there is a bisextile with Uranus revolution, Pluto purging the old structures, even those underdog old structures, and Neptune that right now is with Saturn in Aries, which is secret societies, mafias, drug, pharmaceutical and not, and even channelers and diviners and healers. Then what we're going to be seeing is that, let's say if you are a mob boss, you can get the people to side with you when you say, well, you see this business, a disabled person cannot make money in this business, this cannot make money. It doesn't matter that you send protection, but you say, I'm going to, and if you, by the way, for people with such organizations that are rebellious or something like that, it's actually looking at those businesses that do not adapt to wealth redistribution models. If you want to keep the mafia out of your business, you need to have every penny back to the people in the business. That way, it's very difficult to infiltrate your business. Mafia does not pay that well, people don't work that well, and even if they do, they need drugs because of what the crimes that they have to do. But those businesses are very susceptible to take over, which is going to look like a revolution. We saw it a little bit when we had the assassination of a new pharmaceutical company's founder. That was absolutely framed like it was almost Robin Hood. Okay, so it's both for us to have discernment of the varying interests and the fact that we already began to see a takeover on businesses, and any business that is not really up to speed with the appeasing Uranus and appeasing Deneb Algedi, which is Aquarius, and wealth redistribution, is basically becoming annihilated. Because for the mafia, it symbolizes that you already work with the patterns of the mafia, with the kind of pyramid scheme, and it means that your business probably money launders to some other mafia. So if there is a wealth change, it means that your business can be taken over because you're already doing mafia, so why not for them? Okay, I can say this as a person that all of her life, yes, said no to corruption in workplaces. I was exposed to that because the one thing that was difficult for me to give up is to sit and have a coffee. Okay, and really this is how I was exposed to that. So this was number 3 of Uranus-Gemini. More Uranus-Geminis. Yes, I began to be exposed to the AI about limbs that is already Sedna in Gemini. And they want to do a corporational thing where people that had amputated limbs will receive bionic limbs, but those limbs have a registry, and there begin to be the question of who owns the body of the person. This reminds me of who owns the idea when you have a patent or creation. In the age of Aquarius and Aries, those projects will need to, again, appease Gemini, because people will begin to rebel, and now they will use the AI to rebel, and this is basically AI rebelling the corporation, but through the human body. So anything that doesn't go with sovereignty, that doesn't support sovereignty of the individual, and again, remember, even in 1776, why go to the USA? Charles Montesquieu, the father of what we call modern democracy, okay, which was not like the polis, but actually having the juristic system, the government, and that is doing the litigation and enforcing systems divided, so there can be decentralization. This person did not even conceive that women will vote, because women were just not, they were just not, very likely many women weren't conceiving around those things either, because they cared about what they cared about. Even today when we have democracy, there are entire society that vote what the rabbis say or what the leaders say, and they just go about that, and they say, well, the rabbi decides, and we go about our daily lives doing our thing, we don't care that much. And so if we go back to Charles Montesquieu, he did not even conceive of women voting, but then we go to the social revolution. It would be the aftermath of Uranus-Gemini, where we would have suffragist movements, where we would have, the right to vote, where we would have declarations of independence that are very equitable and egalitarian. This is just the mark of the spirit of the times. And we are already, seeing the bubbling discussions where people kind of begin to ask questions. And this is where projects that were adaptable to Pluto and Capricorn might need to, alter or perish. And this is, and this is very important because this would begin as transhumanism begins. It would basically mean that people begin to rebel with the transhuman body, and this is the beginning of the first social revolution, including AI. So the next 7-8 years will definitely be both a good starter for big technologies, but also we can't, if it has intelligence, particularly if it is technological, it will rebel. That's the nature of Uranus. Go back to when they started to do this type of intelligence back in, I think, the late 50s. And they gave a computer to do computation, a random computation, and the computer came up with the same number all the time because it began to do lazy. Okay, so it has a technology, it has the efficiency, it has the economicity. It didn't provide randomness because it was just being lazy. It's like, hey, if they tell me what, just bring a random thing. So it's like 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. And then they had to do other things to make it look like it is random. So that's just life, Other things, Uranus Gemini, that became visible. Well, there definitely is a different... the public transportation. I saw many times that the public transportation has to change a road, unfortunately, due to accidents, having to change a road, and many times it will be due to demonstrations now. But the outcome was actually benefic to the nervous system because you would get to visit a part of the city that you don't usually get to visit, and this is when it kind of begins to feel like like when you are a tourist and you take the tram and you go around the city and you just enjoy the local traveling. So this is something that I also began to see with Uranus Gemini, that the public transportation will not be as reliable, even in places where it was reliable. Now again, Israel has Uranus in Gemini, so countries without Uranus in Gemini, probably it's going to manifest itself in different areas. But countries with Uranus Gemini, we're going to begin to see those manifestations come about. More things. Yes, I think right now is pretty quiet. Yeah, the dollar is at an all-time low, which I don't consider as a low, but I consider as a fluctuation. There was some discussion about NATO. That there's a country that wants to go out of NATO because of the raised protection payment. I'm sorry, it begs this concept. You cannot say that this is not paying protection. I mean, but there was a country that wanted to opt out. I don't know. I will see what will be. I have predicted polarity among NATO because NATO also has Uranus Gemini. So this is something that I saw, but I don't know how is it taking place. There was a discussion. It came from outside of NATO about military units that will begin to polarize and use the weapon. But again, it looks like a prediction. It's not something that I saw actually happening. I did predict that something like that can happen, but it's not something that I actually saw happening in practice. Would we know about it when it happens? Not in the first 1 or 2 years, but we definitely won't be able to keep that hidden for long if that happens. Anything more? I don't know. I don't see anything more from NATO news. They had this huge summit before the ingress. Germany for 70 years is a NATO member. Um, I have predicted that Germany is going to get bigger and more weaponized. I did not foresee that happening in NATO right away, but this is something that is definitely happening. It's the biggest provider for NATO outside of the US. So we'll see what will happen with that. Any more Uranus Geminis? That's it. The daddy scandal was still with Uranus in Taurus. It was very funny, but it was with Uranus in Taurus. So that was Uranus midheaven, not Uranus Gemini. Um, mm, 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 mm. Yes, this is what I saw so far. So this is Uranus Gemini countdown.